I thought, I can't handle this. I'm too soft. And I just thought being an actor would be a cool thing to do because you could be on the telly. And maybe you could hang around with people in bands and stuff like that.
Honestly,
I was being honest. That's what
Yeah.
happened. It just came out before I could stop it.
Wow. Ray Davies could have played your anniversary. Welcome to Tracks in My Ears with me, Vernon Kay, where a guest tells us the stories behind the 10 songs that they have chosen. Joining me this week is a musician and multi-award-winning actor, known for the Thick Of It, Paddington, Suicide Squad, The Devil's Hour, and playing a mean guitar on Doctor Who. Now starring in the second series of Criminal Record. Welcome, Peter Capaldi. What a CV!
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
When people read that kind of stuff to you, how do you feel? What's your initial reaction?
What, the stuff that I've done? I
Yeah.
thought, God, I'm old.
Oh, behave,
I'm old.
Peter.
I think I'm grateful I'm still here.
Yeah.
And still working. I don't really know how that happened, other than just keeping on going and hoping for the best. You know, it's not
Yeah.
something that you can plan for. I'm genuinely grateful still to be doing it.
Let's talk about the Beatles then, and All My Loving. We just heard it. It's a great track, and it's got everything in it that is synonymous with the Beatles. Why have you picked that personally? What does it mean to you?
Well, because I'm so old, I was around the week it came out. I would have been, I guess, 6 or 7. And I think if you haven't lived through that period, you wouldn't know exactly what an extraordinary impact the Beatles made on this fairly grey landscape that we were growing up in. And suddenly there was Beatles memorabilia or marketing stuff available. I can remember I had a little Beatles guitar with all of their autographs on it, and which you couldn't really play. Woolworths, which was a store then, used to sell Beatles wigs, which they were more like crash helmets.
Right.
they were like black vacuum-formed plastic that I bet you would think would be individual strands of hair. It wasn't.
Right.
It was sort of this kind of jelly mold you put on your
like
head.
the hair on a Lego figure.
Exactly.
Right.
And when you took it off, you had like a scar across your forehead where it had cut into you there. And they weren't really, they said this one was Joan or this one was George. But they were great. I mean, all that stuff was fantastic. So when I hear that song, it really, really reminds me of my childhood, which was quite golden. I mean, I was brought up in a tenement in Glasgow, which sounds a bit, people might think that's a bit dark or a bit romantic or whatever. But it was fantastic. I had one granny lived downstairs, another granny lived across the road. My uncles and aunts all lived in the tenements behind us. I had cousins all around me. I walked to school at the top of the hill. We had a cafe which sold, Italian ice cream and coffee and stuff on the street. It was a very humble kind of childhood. But I can remember my mother. And even to the end of her life, I remember my mother singing this song at the sink, and it was so huge and it made such an impression on us all. And I found it quite moving. It's not just that it's the life in it. It's the vivid sort of life force, the excitement of youth that's in it. And then we see everything that has passed since then, which adds more layers of kind of meaning and emotion to it.
Were you then invested throughout the rest of their career, or was it early Beatles that attracted you the most to them, or did you go through Sgt. Pepper, the White Album? Did you go through the evolution of the band themselves?
No, I didn't, because they weren't the thing they are. They weren't the thing they became.
Right.
My aunties, who I was very close to because we all lived and we all watched Sunday night at the London Palladium together, they rather took again the Beatles when they turned. They went a bit weird. They all thought they got a bit long-haired and a bit strange.
Yeah.
So I didn't really follow them through all that. Not for that reason. But I love them now. I also think they're extraordinary because they're the creation myth of post-war Britain. And also the working class. It's the first time we see that journey from a very humble beginning, from Liverpool, from those little suburban or streets to this massive world domination.
The reaction that we see in the old Pathé newsreel footage of them arriving in New York. You know, the iconic get against steps they're waving, and it's just crazy Beatlemania.
Yeah, but there's another film. We've got this great glut of Beatles documentaries.
Well, you played George Harrison, didn't you? And John
I had, which was the greatest. I've played two Beatles.
Right.
I was sadly miscast as John Lennon, but in a stage version of Willie Russell's play, which was great fun. But I wasn't right for that role. And then I was cast in a TV movie called John and Yoko. Imagine a Love Story. That was its full title. And I got to play George Harrison then. It was so long ago. This was, pre-digital kind of age. So there was a scene where we went to India and hang around with the Maharishi and all that. But we shot it in a field in Slough. And to show that it was India, they had Kilimanjaro painted on a piece of glass, which they held in front of the camera. So it looks as if it was in the distance, but it was actually close to the camera. And you find yourself sitting around this rug with all these various other supporting artists, and you say, "Oh, who are you?" And then someone would say, "Oh, I'm Mio Farrow," or "I'm Donovan," or something like that. What a gas! It was great.
I bet it was.
Yeah.
I bet it was. The next track you've chosen, Peter, is Frank Sinatra, and That's Life. Why have you picked this? What does it mean to you?
My parents moved from, as happened to a lot of people in Glasgow, moved away from the tenements and moved to the suburbs and moved to a rather sweet suburb called Bishopbriggs, which is in North Glasgow. I think there was in those days, the influence of America was all over the place. And I think people wanted to have places to live that looked like they could be a little bit American. So in the humblest kind of way, this was a kind of American-looking suburb. But my parents retained their sort of Glaswegian tenement vigor for life. And because my father still ran an ice cream business in the north of Glasgow, which was quite a tough business. But they would have get-togethers and parties, and sometimes they'd have get-togethers with themselves, just with my mum and dad. They'd have a few drinks and they'd start putting records on. They didn't really have much of a record collection, but there were a couple of. I don't even know how they got there.
Was the record player a sideboard?
Yeah. Yes, of course it was. And with this strange little library section at the bottom where the LPs were supposed to sit. And I guess some people had a wonderful kind of tidy pile of LPs, but we didn't. We just had a handful of LPs which were in a wretched condition. But inevitably Frank Sinatra would come on. And there was the inevitable My Way and all this, which was very big. But the song that really stuck in my mind, because they all sung it, and my dad sung it, and my dad was actually was very musical. He played the piano. There was a piano in that room as well. And all of his brothers were musical. They played, my Uncle Peter, who I'm named after, played the guitar, and my Uncle Joe played the accordion. And they were basically a little band. But when they had these get-togethers in the suburbs, That's Life would come on, and they could sing along to the whole thing, which, as you know, it's quite a mouthful to learn all that stuff. But My Way is a kind of, look at me, I survived everything they threw at me, and here I am. No matter what happened, I did it my way. That's Life is my God, what's happened? Well, I don't know if I can get through this. I'll give it. Look, let's hope we get through it. Keep your spirits up. To hell with it. Let's just get on with it. That's life. That's how it works out. It's a kind of shrug.
Yeah.
It's just the best kind of syncopated shrug in musical history. That's life.
Each time I find myself flat on my face, I pick myself up and get back in the race. That's life. I tell you, I can't deny it.
That was your next choice. Sex Pistols.
Sex Pistols.
Coming out with a punch, pretty vacant.
Yeah. Well, that's because life moves on. And I grew up and I wanted to be an actor.
Oh, wait. Because this is the tracks of your years.
Yeah.
What was the turning point for you? Why did you want to become an actor?
I don't really know.
Behave.
No, I think it's because I think...
Hang on. You can't just say I want to be an actor. What was the inspiration? What was there something at school? Was there a moment on telly that you'd seen? Was it your parents?
Well, all right. Okay. So I hear other people answering this question and they say, I heard Paul Scofield's version of this, or I saw Laurence Olivier's this, or I saw some Chekhov. None of that happened to me. I think I just wanted to be on the telly.
Right.
I loved the telly. I saw the Beatles on the telly. I loved that. I saw Doctor Who on the telly. And then the telly kept on going. And suddenly you got I Claudius. And John Hurt was in there. And he was so cool and evil as Caligula.
More and more, in my precocious wisdom, I realized that the fate of Rome might rely on the single stroke of a knife. A knife in my hand.
And I just thought being an actor would be a good thing, a cool thing to do, because you could be on the telly. And maybe you could hang around with people in bands and stuff like that. So there was nobody in my family who had any connection with the theatre or anything. We only ever went to see pantomimes, maybe at Christmas. My uncle, Peter, had been a crooner in the war, but that was our only connection. But I looked into it and thought, well, how could I become an actor? How do they do that? And I'd read biographies of people and they say they went to drama college. I thought, well, I bet that's the only way I can figure out. I'll try that. So I found out where all the drama colleges were and wrote to them and got auditions. But and I only went to one of the auditions, which was for the Central School of Speech and Drama in London here, and I failed. And I was so heartbroken by the whole thing. I thought, I can't handle this. I'm too soft.
You're about to enter one of the toughest industries ever when it comes to rejection.
That's right.
And you tripped and failed at the
very first time. But I'd always been able to draw and stuff. I'd always been sort of creative in that way. And there'd always been my parents had always sort of thought I should have gone to art school. So I went to art school. And I loved it. And I think it was the absolute right thing to do. I mean, we all turned up at art school in about 1975 in cheesecloth shirts and looking like Neil Young with long hair and stuff. And then in the summer, the Sex Pistols appeared on the scene and everything changed. And we all came back in the autumn term, with earrings and peroxide hair and whatever we could gather. And that sound that they made was so extraordinary. Because everybody in the press said they were rubbish, and they sounded awesome. When we went back to art school in the autumn term, we were all infused by this. And then I started a band then because I thought, I love this. And we got to do some gigs in the Glasgow. And we used to play Pretty Vacant. I mean, Pretty Vacant was probably the first thing we played.
Is this the first moment you picked up a guitar, or were you already playing guitar prior to art school?
I was playing guitar a wee bit.
Right.
Because there had been, and again, my uncle Peter played guitar, and there was a guitar lying about, and I played it, and I had it, but never really studied it. But once that started, I was all in. Once I heard this, but I just felt this whole thing, and also it in its wake came. It opened up, Talking Heads and Bowie and everything like that. I mean, I was actually quite late into music. I mean, art school was the best thing that ever happened to me.
How were you expressing yourself? Were you painting? Were you sculpture?
I started in fine art, which was painting. But I was rather ill-disciplined because I was also very excited by the fact, because we were in a band and stuff like that. And also we got student grants, so we got money, and I would go to the pub and, and spend my student grant. And I got a letter. Well, it was addressed to my mother, but I managed to open it before she got it, saying that your son needs to pull his socks up, more or less. Otherwise, we're not going to invite him back for the next term. So I thought I'd better pull my socks up. So I specialised in illustration.
Oh, nice.
So that's what I did.
Fabulous.
In my degrees in illustration.
It sounds like you had a whale of a time at art college.
It was great. I mean, there was no money, and it was like, you know, and also I mean, it's okay looking back on it now. There were points where I thought, oh God, what am I going? How am I going to get through this? I don't know what we never made any money from being in a band, but it was the lifestyle really that was so attractive.
Yeah, and why not? The next track you've chosen, we're going to play this Mortal Coil, Song to the Siren. Why have you picked that?
Well, I can't remember when I first heard this, but it remains probably the most haunting, truly haunting, in the full meaning of that word, track I've ever heard. But this version of it, with Elizabeth Fraser from the Cocteau Twins and Robin Guthrie playing on it, just evokes a kind of dreamlike melancholy. And of course, I had this very strange thing that happened, which was when we were in a band, and we weren't doing that well, but we'd get sometimes Altered Images, who were very kind to us and who we knew but would give us support gigs, and we'd support them, which was great. And but then on one occasion, we got a gig where we needed a support band because we got a gig in a hotel in Grangemouth. Grangemouth's a kind of oil refinery, basically, on the coast of Scotland. And so we got a gig at this hotel called the International in Grangemouth in about 1981 or 82, whatever. And we went down, and this was a hotel where the local punks came and all that stuff. So we thought it was really exciting. But there was only about 12 local punks. And we were headlining, so that's how low it was in the food chain. And we'd asked for a local support band. And so we got this local support band. And I can remember the girl who was the singer in the band. And they played their gig, and they were good and all that. And then the girl stayed and danced to us, and I can remember her dancing right up to my face and waving her fingers in my face. And I thought, oh, she's very interesting and all that. And then at the end of the gig, it was a reckoning time, and the guy we didn't earn enough money on the door to pay the support band, because it had been something of a big drama for us, because we had to get the money to hire a van. And get all of our gear and come down. The van hire was the most expensive thing because we didn't have a van, and we didn't make enough money to pay the support band. And I was given the job of keep the support band talking while we load the van, and then when you're finished talking to them, run. Yeah, you'll hear the engine roar and run and get in. And this is so unlike me, because I would never do that unless I had to. And of course, it was the Cocteau Twins.
Wow.
Is who the support band were.
Wow.
But the gods of rock and roll got their revenge, because they became huge and we vanished. But to this day, I've felt bad about it. So I owe them £7, I think.
That's hilarious.
Now my foolish boat is leaning, broken off long on your
She began to wail, jealous and scream, waiting on the lights, I would all bring. Scary monsters, super creeps, keep me running scared. Scary monsters.
All right, Peter, we've just heard your next choice, David Bowie and Scary Monsters.
Yeah, I just love David Bowie.
Big influence on yourself.
Huge, yes. And on my wife also. And of course, she always pulls me up about this, because I was not one of those people who saw David Bowie on Top of the Pops singing Starman, and suddenly that was it. She was. So she even has to this day in our attic, she has scrapbooks with the Jackie magazine with, articles about David Bowie and Mark Bolan and all that stuff. I didn't get into it until art school, really, which was sort of station to station and low kind of time, which I just thought, what is this music? This is extraordinary. And I love it, love it, love it. we discovered we'd been to the same Bowie gigs because he played Glasgow in about 1978, I think. He played 4 nights at the Apollo, which was the big venue, which is gone now. And I saved up, and I went there for 3 nights, and she went there for 2 nights. But we didn't know each other at the time. So he's always been a huge, huge influence. So trying to pick something of his to play was difficult. But I thought, people often ask me, because sometimes when I'm acting, I play music to try and get into the mood. I was very lucky my career has gone in sort of, kicks and starts. Sometimes I've done well and sometimes I haven't. And there was a period when it wasn't going terribly well, and then I fell into the thick of it, which sort of transformed everything for me. And I used to play this track to get into the mood. Because usually you use music to get into a mood if it's sad or whatever like that. But the character Malcolm Tucker that I played was this kind of spin doctor who swore all the time and was very aggressive and had a lot of high energy. So I used to play Scary Monsters to get me into the mood for that. I'd be playing that, and then I'd launch into one of his tirades.
These phones are amazing, aren't they? I've got an application here that can throw grenades into people's dreams.
But also, Bowie had an influence on the Doctor in the way that he dressed and played guitar.
Yeah. Well, I always liked that sort of, in The Man Who Fell to Earth kind of time, he had that sort of shirt just buttoned up. And so David Lynch had that as well. I love David Lynch, the director, and David Byrne did it as well. And I just always thought it would be good for kids, instead of having to buy a Doctor Who costume, that they could just have their school shirt buttoned up, like that. But it didn't catch on.
Oh, I love that scale of economy, though. It's very clever. And it was your idea that your Doctor played the guitar.
It was only I said, between season 1 and season 2, I was thinking, what else can we do? And have a think about it. Stephen said to me, have a think about other things you'd like to have a go at. And I just said, well, why can't he play the guitar? Wouldn't it be good if he just had some guitar that he'd sort of made and that you could plug into the TARDIS console and he could be doing these power chords out in space as it's spinning through space. And then maybe he could have an adventure with Jimi Hendrix where he invents the wah-wah pedal or something like that. We never did all of that. But I tried.
He said he got a screwdriver.
That's right.
You've chosen a track now from one of the best, Willie Nelson. Loving Her Was Easier Than Anything I'll Ever Do Again.
Yeah.
Is a great Willie Nelson track. Yeah. Why have you picked this? What does it mean to you?
Well, this is the first song that my wife and I danced to our wedding. Elaine, my wife is, I adore her. She's such a fabulous person. I was so lucky to meet her. She did so much for me, and we met sort of in the late 80s, and we began. That's when I started sort of getting into country music a bit, and she presented me with this Willie Nelson Greatest Hits cassette, and his voice. I mean, that voice is just so beautiful. Again, like Song of the Siren, there's something. It's absolutely authentic. And it reaches a place where it touches the soul. But that song, to me, expresses in a mature and delicate and beautiful way the reality of what it's like to meet the person who is your soulmate and who is the one you should be with. And it's beautiful.
And loving her was easier than anything I'll ever do again.
Well, I'd like to think that I was just myself again. Now tell me why. Is it I'm digging your scene? I know I've died, baby.
That was your next choice, the Blow Monkeys and Digging Your Scene. Why have you picked that one, Peter?
Well, because Dr. Dr. Robert, who's the lead singer and composer with the Blow Monkeys, is a great friend of mine. And I only really met him about around 2008, and it was out in Spain, and there was a little village that we frequent there. And I saw him sort of in a bar, and he looked very glamorous, still looked very glamorous. But I didn't really know him. And then this mutual friend said, you guys should get together. And he played, you play guitar a little bit. And I thought, well, I play guitar, but I'm not like proper.
Yeah.
But anyway, I went to dinner at Robert's house. He was very sweet, him and his wife, Michelle. And he said, well, let's jam for a bit. Because I've never been the guy at a party with a guitar, it's not mine. And I also hadn't been, I stopped being a musician when I was 23. So by this time I'm, 60 something. And he said, yeah, come play. So I started playing with him, and I was terrible. I make terrible mistakes and get the chords wrong and everything, the timing wrong. But he never for a moment, he encouraged me to be there all the time. And I thought it was so generous because I'm duff and he's really good. But he said, no, come. And then he'd start, every time he was doing something with people, he'd say, come. And I'd go and play with him. Gradually, I began to think, I really like doing this music thing. And then he said, well, he had a little label and they were recording, they sort of did an annual album where they brought disparate musicians together and did tracks. And he said, come and see them recording this. And I went to this, because he had a studio in Spain. And it was great. All these different musicians came and stuff. And then he said, write something. I said, what? He said, yeah, go and write. He said, I know you used to write when you were in the band. Write something. I thought, this is an opportunity I can't. So overnight I went and thought, here's some lines and it's a few chords. And I took them into the studio and the band played them. And it was amazing because they were musicians. So they took this thing, I don't mean the song was amazing, this experience of seeing this thing brought to life by these people who could play was so fabulous. And I thought, I've got to do more of this. So Robert really brought me back into music. And he said, well, if you want to do an album or anything, we can do that.
Hang on, so Robert's responsible for St. Christopher in 2021?
He produced the first two albums that I did.
Amazing.
Yeah. And he did a brilliant job. And he just really, I wouldn't be doing music if it weren't for him.
Sweet illusions, keep me company. Sweet illusions. Sweet illusions, run away with me. Sweet illusions.
Peter, your next track is Franz Ferdinand and Take Me Out. And I've got to ask you about you coming on stage with him at Glastonbury.
Yeah.
And then you get welcomed onto the stage. What a reaction, first of all, from the crowd. And then what an experience.
He is here with us tonight, the original Capaldi, Peter Capaldi!
I love the way that you walk on stage, you don't even flinch. You just stand there. And then when the band introduce you, you have such poise. Were you nervous?
Oh, I was terrified. Absolutely terrified, yeah.
You got away with it.
It's
so cool.
Well, long ago, my wife had told me if you're frightened in that kind of situation, just pretend you're cool. And it'll work.
It worked.
So I just pretended to be cool. I mean, I was terrified because I didn't know the crowd was going to be that size.
Had you rehearsed?
I'd rehearsed with the band. The day before.
Right.
I'd known for months that I was going to do it. So, in fact, one of the band who has a friend who lives in North London said that their friend had seen me walking around with my headphones on singing Take Me Out, which is basically what I did for months and months and months. And to me, the whole thing's like a dream. I can't really believe that happened to me.
It's spectacular.
Because it was perfect. It was a beautiful day. The sun was shining. There was a light breeze. That band is so fabulous. If I'd messed it up, that would have been fine. And I was able to stay cool. I mean, that was the thing. I just had to sit on everything, just say, stay cool, walk on the stage, take your time. They're all like 30 years younger than me, so they can all jump up and down and do crazy
Which
kind of-
they were.
which they were doing all that stuff. I thought, you can't do any of that. Just stay cool. So I got away with it. I
It
think.
was fab.
And actually, how it happened was that because of working with Robert and trying to get back into music, I had some other friends in the music industry who said, well, you should, if you're going to record stuff, you should try doing it live. I said, oh, well, I can't do it. I don't have a band. And I had a friend said, well, I'll introduce you to some people and we'll see if we can put a band together for you. And we did this in Glasgow because I was up and down there a lot more. And I had this fabulous band put together for me. And Charlotte, who plays the bass in the band, was very close to Audrey, who plays the drums, and Franz Ferdinand. And I had said to my band, look, see if we sound like Franz Ferdinand, that would be great. You know, with that real heat-seeking missile, kind of straight to the beat, really, you know, acutely played, accurately played guitars. Can we try and do that, please? And obviously that had got back, I think, to them that I was a fan, which I was. And they all went to art school. They all went to Glasgow Art School. So I think that's how it got back to them. But I would never have predicted that I would be on the stage at Glastonbury with them. But it came about because I was working, because I was trying to do something. If I hadn't been trying to do my own music and trying to put a band together, then that would never have happened. So I think it's all attached to making an effort.
I say, don't you know? You say you don't know. I say, take me out. I say you don't show. Don't move, time slow. I say, take me out.
Still we are again in the middle of the night. We dance around the kitchen in the refrigerator light. Down the stairs, I was there. I remember it all too well.
We've just heard Taylor Swift, All Too Well. Why have you picked Taylor Swift?
I do love Taylor Swift. I didn't really know very much about her. And then I saw a documentary. This was before she was mega. And there was a documentary on Netflix about her. And this song, All Too Well, it coincided with really the birth of my first grandchild. So suddenly I was a granddad, or a nonno, as we call them in Italian, which is wonderful, but also strangely kind of melancholic, because you also realize it's fantastic to have babies in your life again, all this chaos that they bring. You know, our house had been quite a Spartan and beautifully designed thing for years, and my daughter had grown up and left, but suddenly she came back with the babies and there was nappies all over the place, and, you know, it was all life again. But my youngest, I used to carry around and take him to my room where I had a record player, not in a sideboard. And someone had bought me All Too Well. And he used to love, he was only about, I guess, 1.5. And he used to love me watching put the needle on the record player, and then this would start. And then the music, and I could see him leaning in as the music began. And then when the drums began, he smiled. And then we'd listen to the whole song. We went through this every time he was with me. And eventually he began to sing. The, ooh. So All Too Well is a fabulous song anyway. But for me, it's absolutely linked to the birth and development and first singing of my grandson. I think she's a brilliant writer. A brilliant writer.
Great storyteller.
Great storyteller. But she's forever linked for me to my beautiful little boy.
Nice. We should talk before you leave us this week about Criminal Record.
Oh, yeah.
Which is streaming on Apple TV.
Yeah.
The second series.
Yeah.
And your character, Daniel Haggerty, is an interesting one.
Yeah. you don't really know whether he's a goodie or a baddie. He's, if people don't know the show, the premise perhaps sounds maybe like you've seen it before, which is a kind of flinty older cop, played by myself. Is teamed up with a younger go-getter, played by Kush Jumbo. But unlike other shows, they don't learn life lessons from each other. They don't become close and share little gags and get warmer. They basically can't stand each other for the entirety of the 2 seasons that we've done so far, which is great to play. But the surprise we had with the show, which, it's a fairly humble, British police procedural, was that internationally it became really, really successful. It was like number 2 in the States and in the world, last time with Apple, which was amazing. So we find we go to America and people recognize us from Criminal Records. And my wife is the executive producer of the show, so she put it together from the start. That's the only time we've worked. She as a producer has produced, like, she came up with Vera and Shetland and those kind of shows. Not that she has any particular interest in crime. But she's never given me a job until now.
Nice. Well, good luck with season 2.
Thank you.
I'm sure that there'll be more recognition in the United States of America coming your way, Peter. You're going to struggle getting on the teacups now at Disneyland. The last track you've chosen is Waterloo Sunset by the Kinks.
Yeah. One of the most beautiful songs ever written. When I first came to London, the first job I got in the theatre was at the Young Vic, which, for those who don't know, is very close to Waterloo Station. And I lived in Kensal Green in North London, so I had to get the tube down there every day. But Waterloo Station was there, and Waterloo Bridge was there. And I used to always sing that song to myself. And I used to think, it's so it evokes the 60s so perfectly, but also, for me, it evokes the place. And I thought, well, Ray Davies must live around here. They must come from Waterloo, surely, to write this. And then I discovered years later that he didn't, they came from North London, which is where I ended up living. And not only that, he came from Muswell Hill, which is where I ended up living. So fast forward, 30 years or something, and we're sitting having pasta with some friends in a restaurant up in Highgate, and somebody says, "That's Ray Davies over there." I said, "What? That guy?" He said, "That's Ray Davies." What, the guy who wrote Waterloo Sunset? Sitting over there? And they said, "Yeah, that's him." And I thought, well, if that's him, I'm going to go and say hello. I'm going to go say hello and say thank you. And being as I was, by that time I'd become sort of quite well known for being in Doctor Who, and it's always nice when people come and talk to me and say hello, but it's nice if it's brief. So I thought, I'll keep it brief. I'll just say, Mr. Davies, I don't want to disturb you. I'll let you get on with your pasta, but I just wanted to say that Waterloo Sunset's one of the most beautiful songs ever written, and thank you for that. Good night, whatever. And I did that and said it, and he took my hand, and he said, "I'm so glad that you like that. You told me that. And what are you doing yourself?" And I said, "Well, I'm acting in this thing." He said, "Oh, yes, I've ever seen you on the telly." And then we fell into conversation. And I mean, I stood with him for about 20 minutes, talking about the Kinks and the 60s and all that kind of stuff. And this bit's like a gag that doesn't work out. I said to him, funnily enough, I said, my wife and I were having our 25th wedding anniversary party in a couple of weeks, and we're having it at the Clissold Arms. The Clissold Arms, for those who don't know, was what the Cavern was to the Beatles. The Clissold Arms was to the Kinks. And he said, "Do you want me to come down and play?"
He didn't.
I actually heard myself say, "Oh, Ray, I've already got a band." Before I could stop it, it came out of my mouth.
It didn't.
It did, but that was the truth. We did already have a band, and I would have to pay them.
Wow.
I'm sure he was just being very mannerly.
Did he go to your party? Your wedding anniversary party?
No. But
Wow,
but it
Peter,
was,
that's genius.
I couldn't believe that was out of my mouth before. But I'm sure he was just being manly because he was very sweet. And he's got better things to do.
But also, that's a nice reflection on yourself, just being honest. Honest.
I was being honest. That's what
Yeah.
happened. It just came out before I could stop it.
Wow. Ray Davies could have played your anniversary. Peter, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's been an
Thank you.
absolute joy. And what a journey. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
As long as I gaze on Waterloo Sunset, I am in paradise.